What's going on, Savages? Welcome to another episode of the Savage Snowflake podcast with me, Jeff Leach. How are you? It's great to be back. I feel like we're back in the swing of things properly now. Obviously, last episode, that came after a couple of weeks out whilst I was traveling in New York and Las Vegas, performing in both of those places. Today's episode comes the day after Halloween, just to give you a little bit of a time reference and time frame. So last night I went dressed, I don't know if you can see the dregs of red makeup under my nails if you're watching this online on YouTube, but I went as a red balloon yesterday, and my lady went as Pennywise the Clown. I spent the whole day making her outfit, and then I put myself in a terrible inflatable balloon outfit, but we looked hilarious together. Had a lot of fun. I hope you guys enjoyed your Halloween as well. Thank you very much to our sponsors, of course, and all of our patrons. If you are a patron, or if you're not a patron, head over to patreon.com/savagesnowflake. For as little as $1 a month, you can support this wonderful podcast. Keep it going. Keep getting these wonderful guests that I've been having on, like Joe DeRosa on the last episode, Seth Green a while back, etc., etc. Also, thank you very much to manscaped.com, refining the gentleman. If you are a hirsute individual and you need a little bit of a trim up, you want to keep yourself fresh and hygienic and looking good for your ladies or your gentlemen, make sure to head to manscaped.com. You can use code SAVAGE over there and you'll get 10% off every order. Joining me today is a gentleman that I met in New York City. We actually did Sherrod Small's Race Wars podcast together. We both appeared as guests on there with, I believe, who else were we on
Ann
with?
Coulter.
We were with Ann Coulter.
Yeah.
Of course. The
She spiced it up pretty good.
The infamous Ann Coulter. Yes. Yeah, there's a love-hate. We can get into that in just a second. I should introduce you first. Now, his name is Judge Herb Dodell. Dodell. I pronounced it incorrectly. I apologize. Sorry, sir. And he's written this book, From the Trench to the Bench, which is navigating the legal system and finding your spiritual path along the way. And I haven't had time to read it. It's a big read. There's a lot of information here. 360 something pages.
Much of it are really exhibits. They're not part of the book.
Right. Okay. So
attachments. It's about 280 pages.
It's. Is this effectively a how-to for anyone who is trying to navigate the American legal system in this country and maybe doesn't necessarily have the money or the foresight to afford an expensive lawyer like yourself?
Well, the reality is that many people get caught up in the legal system and really don't know what to expect. And non-expectation and uncertainty leads to stress and anxiety.
Absolutely.
So people, when they get in the system, number one, they know very little about the system.
Right.
So just a brief history. I was a former prosecutor, then a criminal defense lawyer, civil cases as well. And I was appointed as a judge pro tem in 2008. So I've been 10 years on the bench.
Right.
Retiring today.
Today?
Today. I'm retiring.
Congratulations.
Yes. So anyway, I did 10 years.
What are you going to do with your free time now?
Oh, I'm going to be in mediation.
In mediation.
I'm going to be a mediator. I was trained as a mediator, and in the court system, I was really settling a lot of cases, as a matter of fact. When I was assigned to particular courts, I was very effective at the settlement part, and I realized one day, you know what? If you're a mediator, you're really just trying to help people.
Absolutely.
You're just putting both sides together.
You would like to think so, right?
Well, you take the ego out of the issues as best you can, and once you do that and you get into the sense of reality, and somebody who's experienced in the field is telling you this is what you could reasonably expect, that's very, very valuable. And that's why I wrote the book, because I wanted the public to get a real sense, number one, learning what the system really is from the inside, because people don't know how it works from the inside. Trust me.
Not, yeah.
We
barely understand how it works from the outside, I think.
Well, what I did is I put a chapter on how to pick a lawyer, because there's lots of ways to pick a lawyer, and it's not just looking at the back of the bus or somebody's big billboard, you know. So the object is to, number one, inform you.
It really works its way through. I mean, I'm looking at just the menu of content. It really does have very defined and very clear outline segments, you know. So, okay, I'm being harassed, threatened, or seeking a restraining order. What do? I'm being sued. What do? I found a good lawyer. What's next? You know, judge or jury, which way to go? Landlords, tenants. It really has everything. Contract disputes. It feels like it's a 101 for
Somebody said it's
any
like
of your
law for the
legal
dummies,
needs. It's what, sorry?
like law for the dummies.
I like that. Law for dummies, yeah.
But the reality is I wrote it with the idea of taking out all the technicalities
Right.
and putting it in simple layperson's language.
Yeah.
Because when lawyers are talking lawyerese,
Of course.
the public has no clue what it really means. And so
Isn't
I have
that
a
part of the flamboyance of the industry, though?
well, yeah, look, it's good marketing because
Yeah.
if you're unique and you have a special talent, people are going to look for you.
Especially
so it's
if
about
you
marketing.
understand something they don't. That's why they pay you, the extortionate rates that
Well,
a lot of lawyers can
but-
afford to charge.
But that only works in certain circumstances because I tell you about contracts that with lawyers in the book. When you're picking a lawyer, here's the kind of arrangements that are general or customary, and this is what can be done. This is what you ask for. This is what you expect, et cetera, et cetera. And that's a kind of, like I say, law for the dummies.
Yeah.
But I wanted to do it in a way that would be not only informative and entertaining, but have some meaning. And so I used real cases, either cases that I was a lawyer on before I was appointed or even after, and the cases that I decided as a bench officer. And so I use all those cases as illustrations because if it happened to somebody else, it could happen to you.
Absolutely.
And most people have no real clue as to what to expect when they're sued or they have to sue somebody. And if you have a $9,000 claim in California, are there alternative ways and methods for you to get relief? Yes, the answer is small claims court.
Right.
I decided over 10,000 cases. Not necessarily decided. A lot of them were just continuances and things like that. But
Sure.
I heard over about 10,000.
Presided over.
Yeah,
10,000
well, that's
cases.
true. They're on my calendar.
Yeah, yeah.
Over 10,000 cases. So I figured, well, with all the experience, I could help the public more by being a mediator.
That makes you an expert officially now, doesn't it? Don't you have to do 10,000 hours of something to be considered an expert? So after 10,000 cases, I think the same thing applies.
Yeah,
10,000 performances of stand-up comedy should make me a master of the craft. I'm not sure if I'm there yet. I don't think I've done 10,000 shows. However,
but it's not about the quantity, it's about the quality.
Oh, well, you've never
It's
seen
the
my
same-
stand-up.
It's the same thing. Well, when I was writing it, I didn't want to be overly cynical of the profession.
Sure.
But I wanted to tell the truth, how it really works.
Well, let me ask you this: do you think the American legal system is broken? I know it's an incredibly general question, but do you think
Well, broken is a very bad term. I mean,
Right.
there are degrees of everything. Is it perfect? Definitely not. I mean, people want to know, who are the judges? How do they get there? Do you inherit the job? Do you get appointed? Do you get elected? Who pays you? People want to know that. They have no clue how it really works and how some of these people end up on the bench.
Well, we look at the recent, the appointment of Brett Kavanaugh. Even that was, people were up in arms because they're saying, well, there's a question as to the morality or the ethical and moral standing of this gentleman right now, and yet he can still be appointed to one of the most powerful legal positions in this country.
It's going to be even more powerful in the next year.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that are brewing. In fact, I have a radio show of my own. It's called For the People on KCAA Radio, and we talk about all of these issues that are coming up, and that's what we're doing right now. So it's a very interesting time. And Kavanaugh, the big issue with Kavanaugh wasn't whether he was for Roe versus Wade, even though they made it look that way. The big issue is how far can a president go in terms of exercising the president's obligations under the Constitution. And he gave the right answers according to the Federalist Society, which supports mainly conservative candidates. And so he's going to be in a position, they're going to be deciding constitutional issues now that are first impression, that deal with the expansion or reduction of freedom and constitutional rights, powers of the president, separation of powers, discovery. All these issues are coming up. We saw the first of what will probably be many last week in a case that the federal district court judge in Washington decided that basically crystallizes what's going on now with regard to an impeachment. Is it an impeachment? Is it a proceeding? Is it whatever it is to fit into somebody's definition of what belongs there? and not necessarily true. Those are untested principles at the moment, and it's very simple to see that this group, that's at the Supreme Court level right now, is going to be the ultimate determinant as to what's going to happen with regard to the operation of our democracy. It's a serious time right now.
I'm as an immigrant in this country, however, green card and legal I have very little understanding of the American legal system. In fact, I think like most people, which is why you've written this book for people like me, I have very little understanding of the legal system in my own country as well, like I think most Americans do. But it seems to be, as an outside observer, maybe as an objective observer, America has always presented itself as the land of the free, the land of the brave, where everyone gets a voice, everyone gets their fair trial, etc., etc. But then when it comes to viewing how the upper echelons of governance in this country are elected, are voted in or out, it seems very murky.
Well, you asked the question before if I thought the system was broken.
Sure.
It's broken in many ways because, as a general rule, and I speak only in generalities, because nothing is supported by statistical numbers.
Understood.
You could say he's quoting something.
Telly's a top-class lawyer. He's covering himself already.
Well, but in general terms, the haves will beat the have-nots most of the time.
Right.
Why is that? Because, number one, they have the financial clout to wait it out. They can get high-end lawyers who are going to beat up on the lower-end lawyers. Mm-hmm. They make people spend money that they don't have. They know how to work the system.
Right.
So those are the haves. So what rights do the have-nots have? Well, one of the things I wanted to do in writing the book was to give the have-nots some of the, I call it tips, I suppose, or examples or guidelines that might work for them.
Right.
Like I was assigned to restraining order court for almost between 5 and 6 years.
I remember. We talked about this on Race.
So I heard some great stories.
Yeah.
But that's all ego, and you can resolve a lot of issues if you reduce the ego. And so what I thought I would do in writing the book was try to show the public what you really need to consider and think about in more indirect terms, more spiritual terms, because that dictates the outcome of many of your cases.
Right.
It's your own consciousness of what you are, who you are, and why you're doing it, and why is it happening to you. Most judges or lawyers don't approach subjects that way. I did it from my own spiritual perspective, and I added that in various places.
Do you think that makes you quite unique within the legal system here? Or do you think are there a lot of judges and lawyers who work from a spiritual basis?
I think there's a mixture of all. That's one of the problems of the system is, and I always used to ask clients in the beginning, who's your judge? Oh, I don't know. I said, that's right. You don't know. And who's your jury going to be in? Who's going to be in that jury?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I said, that's right. You don't know. You could have the worst judge, and there are plenty of those. Trust me, and I know from the inside.
Yeah.
For reasons I also discuss in the book somewhat.
Shame. Shame.
But the bottom line is some great judges.
Yeah.
And some shouldn't be there to begin with. They're there for the wrong reasons and exercise power in any appropriate way. And there's so much discretion involved in the system that rarely ever does it get appealed.
Right.
Because you could only appeal an abuse of discretion if the judge acted arbitrarily and capriciously. And generally, the judges know enough to make it appear that they gave it a serious consideration.
Absolutely.
So you don't know who you're going to get.
If these people have been, however morally or ethically skewed they may be, some of them may be in that position for the wrong reasons, like you said. They're also intelligent enough to have got appointed to that position. So
no, that's not
I'm
so.
sure they're not going to cover their tracks.
No, that's not so. There are some judges that are really dummies. The book should be written for them.
How does a dummy get made a judge in the American legal system?
Well, at least in California,
there
are 3 ways.
Okay.
Way number 1, get appointed by the governor.
Right.
Who probably doesn't know who you are, but somebody in the organization knows who you are because you made a contribution.
So a whisper in the right ear leads to
you know, and it's a who do you know?
Okay.
And there's lots of people applying for it, so the people who are getting it after they do a vetting of those people. And I'm not so sure that the vetting is that deep to begin with.
Right.
But whatever, it's a process. There's a committee that evaluates these judge applicants.
Mm-hmm.
You got to pass that committee. But generally, the governor appoints you, and you're now a full-time judge. Second way is election. And in almost every election that I can remember, there are open spots. Somebody's retired, somebody's died, and so there's a spot open, and it's like a Superior Court number 14. So everybody who wants that job runs for it. They raise money and they run a campaign, and nobody ever knows who any of them are. They always list themselves as like gang prosecutors. Whatever it is, you look at the ballot, it's just a bunch of names, right?
Yeah.
But
I'm assuming you have to have at least a level of legal knowledge or experience.
you have to be a member of the bar.
You have to be a member of the bar and be licensed for.
Right.
See, they can't be that.
But they don't.
stupid,
But you don't know anything about these people.
No, absolutely
You see
not, of
3
course.
lines on a ballot, you
Sure,
know, and
sure.
so they get elected, right? The third way was the way I did it. Was a friend of mine recommended me.
You slept with the right person.
No.
Oh, okay.
And if you knew him, you would absolutely know it wouldn't be true under any circumstance. The fact of the matter is that
You shared a little thigh in court.
he,
didn't you?
we were having lunch one day, and he was complaining that in his court, he was a judge, is a judge, that they're overwhelmed because there was not enough money in the budget
Right.
to bring in additional people. This is 2008.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, well, what can I do? He said, if you volunteer, then and we don't have to pay you, I'll get you appointed as a judge pro tem, meaning part-time, so you're not working 40-hour weeks.
Sure.
And you go by way of assignments. They send you to various courts to preside in those courts after you qualify. Then you have to take an educational course and whatever, and then the presiding judge of that district appoints you. And that's how you get appointed, usually for 3 years.
Right.
And every 3 years you got to kind of reapply or send in a little note or whatever, and you get reappointed. And so I was appointed over a 10-year period, and that's the third way of doing it. No political involvement, no monetary involvement. I have no financial agenda whatsoever. I don't get paid, and I've devoted a fair amount of time to doing it because I love it. And now I want to do it for the
You're
purpose
a
of
bloody
the public.
socialist.
No,
Bloody
I'm
socialist,
not.
Herb.
I'm a moderate capitalist.
Hey, well, capitalism. Look, I'm glad you brought that up because I feel the same way about this. If I can dilute, and again, I'm going to talk in generalizations and probably from a very uneducated standpoint. So please forgive me if you think that people have already passed the bar are some of them are dummies. Then you're probably going to think I'm an absolute moron. However, I will still make my point. When I look at the history of this country, the reason I ask is the system broken is I feel like this is not a country. I don't think America is a country. I think it's a business. It operates like a business in every facet of what it is. And I think that's because it was birthed upon 3 major tenets, which was the pilgrims, the fanatical pilgrims who came from Europe, who decided that the Pope was too lenient and that Catholicism had lost its way, and that they wanted to find a new world where they could establish the hardline fanatical religious beliefs that they apply themselves to. So they came over on the ships. Obviously, slave owners who were annoyed that Europe had abolished slavery, so there were people who wanted to continue that practice in a new land where they could make their own rules. And then obviously capitalism, the capitalists. And the format for capitalism, Adam Smith's book, is he very clearly outlines a particular part in it that this formula for the success of capitalism as a concept will only succeed if the governance of the country is established in is solely concerned with the safety, well-being, and rights of the people of that country. So you can certainly have this market where independent businesses can flourish and big money big wealth can be generated amongst most people, but you have to have a governance that is solely concerned not with business, not with the money, not with the monetary wealth, but with the rights and fair treatment of the people of the citizens of that country. And of course, in America, when everyone came across as they're building train tracks across the country and they're starting to establish towns, etc., etc., the people who were in governance were the capitalist businessmen who were solely concerned on their own profits. So you have a completely lopsided formula, which is why I think now we're facing the reality of a rapidly diminishing middle class. I don't know if it barely exists in this country anymore, and they're certainly under a huge amount of strain and pressure, similar to England. More and more people who are fixated on immediate financial gain in small ways, like, oh, I have a brand new pair of trainers, look at me, I'm making good, or I have a new car that I'm leasing, isn't that a symbol that I'm doing well? But they'll never own a property. Generation Z now never own a property, never really build themselves up any kind of sense of I guess not it's not about making money, but it's about, like, my parents would own a house. You own a house and then you pass it on to your children. That concept is almost dying out now. And then you have an incredibly wealthy top 1% who seem to be getting away with not paying any tax to the country in which they operate their businesses. So I as an outside observer, I feel desperately happy to meet someone like you, but also I feel very frustrated on your behalf, because it must be difficult to want to operate the concept of law in this country in a morally and ethically, and in your case, spiritually positive manner, when you're facing a country that seems to be a broken capitalist formulaic, very much top 1% focused, and I think deeply broken legal system. It's hard to operate with.
Well, but there are remedies for people who are in the middle. Poor people generally don't get involved in much of the system other than getting arrested, or welfare issues, or landlord-tenant issues, or things that would not necessarily be concerning to the rich person.
Poor then.
Well,
I've been arrested in this country.
But by the way, I also have a couple of chapters in the book on criminal law. People who get arrested at 3:00 in the morning. What do you do?
Okay.
Who do you talk to? What's your obligation?
Right.
What is your risk? Do I need a lawyer? I do a whole chapter on that.
Is there anything in here for immigrants who get arrested at 3 a.m?
No, but in the revised version, maybe I'll include it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
What you say, and I can see how passionate you are about it, is accurate to a large degree. But if you look back even to the Eisenhower years, for those of you who remember who Eisenhower was, I think he that described it as a military-industrial complex. And the fact of the matter is that there are some people that are really running this world, and they're the people with the money.
Absolutely.
Which
I think now, collectively as a global populace, we're more and more aware of that now.
But there's a danger, too, in the quick expansion of the instantaneous nature of information today.
Would you like your water, by the way?
No, I'm okay.
Okay,
thanks.
No worries. If you want anything important, let me know and I'll go and grab it.
The reality is that there are a lot of competing interests, and what you describe is one end of the pole, and then you hear the other side at the other end of the pole. But there should be some place in the middle that you might refer to as a gray area,
sure,
where some legitimate medium works. Yeah. And that was another reason why I was going into mediation, is because people, if they sit down and they can take out the ego, what's ego? Greed, revenge,
insecurity,
power. You name those, and none of them are any good. And if that's your motivation for being in anything, you are becoming the cause of what ultimately will result in an effect. And if your cause is that was done by taking for yourself at the expense of others, or exhibiting those kinds of egotistical impulses, then at the end of the day, someday, somewhere, you're going to pay it back, because that's the ultimate of cause and effect. If you said the right kind of energy, the right kind of message, that you're doing the right thing for the right reason, and that includes compromise, well, then you attract a very positive energy, and you're in the right place at the right time. Things do not happen by accident. Everything is predetermined, and you determine it. So from my perspective, and looking at it as a judge, I was looking at it, I made a real effort to resolve cases with people who were in dispute. And it didn't matter whether it was a small claims court where I was for many, many years, or whether it was restraining orders, or it was just landlords and tenants. And to answer your question about representation, it makes a big difference. But different lawyers will work on different bases. Personal injury lawyers are on a percentage basis. You don't pay anything. But you want to know that the lawyer is going to pay the costs. What if the lawyer can't pay the costs?
Yep.
Where are you? So these are things you want to know when you go in to talk to a lawyer.
A lot of people get injured in America.
But
I can only judge it by every time I go to Vegas to do shows there. Every other billboard is for injury law. Injury law.
Look, there's big money in personal injury law, because you're getting a piece of the action. And there is a problem with contingency fee law situations, but people never think of it. But I tell you in the book why I know that sometimes contingency deals are not so good for you.
Right.
But it looks great on its face. And there are ways to adjust those so that you don't have to be gambling everything and giving away the ship at the same time. But the reality is, and I'll tell you just a quick sentence, contingency lawyers have one goal: settle them quickly, because quickly means less overhead, less expense. And so the quicker they get them, the less money they have to spend, the greater the profit.
There you go.
And so they will tell the clients many times, Harry, there's a problem with the case. And they'll find something that
we should really accept.
That's exactly right. And a lot of those cases settle for far less than they're really worth.
Wow.
And I saw it even in small claims court cases, where the lawyers abandon the clients and they're in small claims court. And it's amazing what goes on in the system. Now, hourly lawyers have another motivation. They want to keep it open as long as they can keep it open.
Oh, I've got some lawyers for a CBD company that I own with a business partner, and I was very naive to the the world of corporate law, and every time I get an email response, I didn't realize that every single email that's sent to me is billed. That's a billable 12 seconds of that lawyer's life.
It's the mantra in that world, which is called billable hours, billable time.
Sure.
In fact, if you look, and I talk in the book about how lawyers work their way up in the firms and how the firms work. The lawyer comes in, and the management of the law firm expects that lawyer, he or she's going to work 2,400 hours a year.
Yeah.
You got to bill 2,400 hours a year because they're paying you X and they're billing you out at 3 times X, literally 3 times X, sometimes even more. And so the big money is made on the work of the associates.
Right.
But what are you getting when you're getting one of these associates? Sometimes 6 months out of law school. I mean, the big firms, you go to some of the big firms and you look at all the artwork on the walls and look out the windows at the view of the ocean. Who do you think is paying for that?
Yeah.
You are. And so a friend of mine was a defense lawyer, and we all got along very well. I did some defense at one time as well.
Okay.
Said that among the firms, it's you can't bill a closed file, meaning once you finish it, you're waiting for the next piece of business.
Sure.
And so they want to keep them open as long as they can keep them open.
Yeah, no, I've experienced that.
Your case is really better than we thought, and all of a sudden other side of the mouth.
Have you come in so we can discuss it? Yeah, you should really come in so we can have
dialogue.
a discussion.
The dialogue is remarkable.
I don't even reply to the emails from my lawyer anymore because I'm terrified if I even say anything that warrants a response. That's another $150, you know.
But on the other hand, the worst part of practicing law is dealing with the clients.
Right.
For the same ego issues, the expectations, all of that.
Have you not rectified this yet?
And somehow you rarely get recognized for the quality of the work. And a lot of lawyers work very, very hard. When I was practicing full time, I put in long hours till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning every morning.
Yeah.
And so there are a lot of good, hard-working lawyers who are honorable.
You're like a stand-up comedian, Joe.
Well, sometimes I feel like I was doing that. In fact, I was criticized once. And one of the administrators of the court came in to see me after we had done the calendar for the day.
Yeah.
And she says, this is not a place for humor. We didn't appoint Judge Judy. I was doing small claims court. I was trying to make it human, because people go there, they're nervous.
Sure.
And I try to make it as comfortable as I can. Somebody's going to win and somebody's going to lose. And I try to push them into settlement by telling them, you don't know what the outcome's going to be. Why take a chance? And I put the story in the book, as a matter of fact, which is illustrative of what I'm talking about. I had a case in front of me where a family was suing a private school for return of tuition. But
you did do 10 tight minutes on school shootings during that whole proceeding, didn't you? Like you wrote a whole set list and did a whole thing. I mean, it was a little over the top, Judge.
Well,
like
whatever. I had a great.
Is he making a serious point, or is he just
but I got to tell you something. It was probably among the careers that I've had, because I started as an entertainment lawyer.
Right.
It was the most rewarding.
That must have been tiring.
I gave it up finally because I got tired of the 3 o'clock in the morning phone
surprised.
calls. But the reality was that of all the jobs and careers, being a judge was the best, absolutely the best. I felt fulfilled at the end of the day. I felt that I did the right thing.
Is this what you always wanted to go into?
No, I was offered the full-time judge position many times, and I said I wasn't really interested in doing it.
Right.
The pay isn't that great, and what you get is the perks.
Robes are itchy.
No, robes are heavy.
Heavy.
I have a very lightweight. My kids bought it for me.
Right.
Very, very lightweight. You
got a special one made.
Yeah.
Nice, I like that.
But,
a couple of little hidden pockets inside of it.
But the pockets don't have pockets. They actually goes right into your pants.
Oh, there you go.
It's like a little slit on the side.
I like that.
But in fact, we didn't wear them except when you had to do it in the courtroom. You don't wear it in chambers or anything.
Have you ever broken the law?
It depends on what your definition is.
Are you talking about
the statutory, the spiritual, or the physical law?
Wow.
And be more specific.
We could talk about. I'm always intrigued to know if, because you're human, and also clearly being human and the humanity that you would like to show as a good man, you also like to show as a good judge. However, as a human, you're fallible and you're, I'm sure, guilty of your own emotional responses to things. You ever been, given the old finger and cut someone up and hit the side of the car? You ever done anything that's landed you in a jail cell or with a ticket? You ever had to go up in front of a judge yourself?
Traffic court. I was in traffic court a bunch of times.
Oh, yeah?
In fact, when I took the appointment, I said, I'm not doing traffic court.
Right.
I was determined I'm not doing traffic court. I've been in small claims court on both sides.
Okay.
And just so the public knows, there are no lawyers in small claims court unless you're a party. So I've been a party, even chasing fees that people didn't pay, or the gardener, whatever it was.
Right.
And
but I mean,
and on both sides,
that's
and
pretty
the bench.
good to be have a legal training.
Makes a difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
It does, because I had many cases where I would have ruled differently had they raised it as part of their cases. They didn't realize. And here's a story, and it's really a tragic story in a way. True story.
Okay.
This was a case that was before me. It was a case where the owner of a residential property was seeking to evict the owner.
Okay.
The owner was a nationally known, probably internationally known NBA basketball player.
Right.
Serious star. The rings, the whole deal. Mm-hmm. And he had bought a house for $7 million in a very ritzy neighborhood. And I guess he fell upon hard times after he retired. I don't know what he did. But
I was spending it all on G-Wagons.
No, he was not that kind of guy.
Most major.
No, this guy was a very legitimate guy.
Really?
I knew his reputation.
But did he invest his money wisely? I mean,
I didn't get into that. But the point was, I read his papers. He was not represented by a lawyer.
Right.
And the bank was there with their 2 lawyers, and they wanted to take over, foreclose, and out he goes. So I'm reading the papers, and I'm saying to myself, he raises an interesting fact, but he doesn't develop it. And I said to myself, he's got a potential defense here. He doesn't know it, and I'm not allowed by law to give advice to either party for obvious reasons. And I'm looking at him and saying, this guy, if he has a smart lawyer, and I was certified and trained in landlord-tenant, so I knew pretty much where we were going with this. And I said, you want more time to get a lawyer? Because I'm inclined right now to grant a writ of possession. And I'll give you 2 weeks. I'll stay the execution of the writ.
So you gave him a little an opportunity.
I tried.
A little nudge in the right direction.
But I didn't. I couldn't tell him what he had or why he was doing it.
But you gave him at least a sense. Hey,
2 weeks
I'm
later,
suggesting a lawyer might be beneficial for you.
2 weeks later, he's back. No lawyer. I read the amended papers. Not there. And so basically, I issued the writ, and he was probably evicted. But he waited outside of the courthouse when I came out that afternoon. And he wanted to talk to me. I said, I'm sorry, I can't speak with you because I cannot have what they call ex parte communications. Both sides have to be present at the same time. So I really can't have any conversation with you. I'm sorry. And I said, but I'll give you one recommendation. Go see a lawyer. That's it.
Yeah.
I don't know whatever happened, but there's a perfect example of where the haves beat the have-nots.
Yeah.
Even though he wasn't a have-not, was always a have-not. He was a have-not at the time of this event, and I saw a lot of that happening. That was another reason I wrote the book, because people, if you know what the law is, even you don't have to be academic. You don't have to go through all the details to be good. Just to have basic knowledge, simple knowledge, general knowledge. You're going to be better prepared for what's going to come your way down the road, and what to bring up with your lawyers too. You know, if that lawyer knows you're not going to win, they have an obligation to tell you that. How many times are they going to think you're going to tell you that? Not many.
Yeah.
And so the reality is, if you have some general basic knowledge, then you're better prepared and you're better armed. And so I saw so many unrepresented people. I said to myself, you know, they really need to know enough to get there. A reference, just something that you can pick up and say and read in 15 minutes. It's a hell of a lot better than spending hundreds or thousands of dollars with a lawyer who's going to tell you the same thing at the end of the day.
Exactly. Or
so,
Googling it and reading it on a blog that some lunatic has written, you know, rather than someone with how many years of legal experience?
Well, enough. But the bottom line was, my motive in doing it is basically, you can read it on the back of the book, is to help the public navigate the system, do it in the right way, and
more than half
the results
a
will be
century.
better. Yeah, it was
over 50 years.
Yeah.
How did you end up in the legal profession? What was young Herb like? Because I people watching the video.
I was taller.
You're an elderly gentleman. How old are you now?
80.
80 years of age. Okay, so 80 years of age. Wow, you've seen a lot of change in this country. First of all, and a lot of change in the legal system, I imagine, over the course of the 50 plus years that you've been operating within it. What was a youngster Herb?
Well, in the introduction to the book, I tell it all in one sentence. When I was a kid, like 5 years old, all my relatives said I had to be a lawyer because I had a big mouth and I liked to argue. That's what they told me. And so it was destined. At that moment, I was destined to
that is it.
And I really never varied. I was in law enforcement, and I was also involved in entertainment stuff, which is not really law. It's more business, more negotiation.
Law enforcement? Were you a police officer for a while?
No, I was a deputy district attorney.
Okay. Oh, okay.
And I had worked my way through law school.
Right.
And doing internal security for a corporate company. Mm-hmm. And so I was there I wasn't licensed at the time, but it was basically fraud investigations. So I had some experience with warrants and things like that.
Right.
And entertainment, I just kind of fell into that, and was in the right place at the right time for the things to happen.
Yeah.
And I got pretty far, actually. And then decided I was tired of all of the entertainment stuff. And
what would tire you about dealing with egos in Hollywood. How on earth would that be frustrating?
You know what? I think I would have handled it better before than I would have handled it now.
Really?
I would have handled it differently, I should say.
Differently now?
Definitely now.
What, more dismissive now? Or...
No, I'm more accepting of the reality and what people's motivations are and how to deal with them in as less controversial or adversarial method as you can. And you can do that if you have the right attitude. And that's what I talk about cause and effect in the book and things like that. There's two forms of energy, positive and negative. Which one do you want to connect to? You want to connect to the negative energy? Just do all of the ego tricks.
Oh, I did a good 20 or more years of connecting to the negative energy in my life. And I found it very, very tiring. You know, I'm very, incredibly tiring. And I finally now, in the last few years, you know, with a move to California and trying to do various things for my body and my mind that make me feel a lot more positive, like no drinking. I gave up drinking 4 months ago, and just small things, you know, that have now had a huge impact on how I view situations. You know,
you will. One of the things about compromise is most of the time both parties feel they didn't get a good deal.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at the ultimate resolutions of most of these cases, and can I have time to tell one story?
Absolutely, yeah. We got another 15 minutes.
Oh, okay. This is another true story. I was sitting in, I'm not sure if it was small claims court or UD court, but there was a case before me where a lady was suing her former boyfriend,
right.
Young woman suing her boyfriend. They had been living together,
mm-hmm.
and one day he upped and left her with the obligations under the lease.
Right, okay.
So I found out, of course, I asked, both parties were present, was there a written lease? So I looked at it. They both were signatories.
So
I said to him,
right?
He had kind of waltzed away. I said to him, you know what? If I find against you, you will have a record of this. Not a criminal record, but there'll be a judgment against you. And if you're looking for work or something like that, they look up at your score and they see a judgment against you for A, B, C, D, and E, and F, and G, it might affect you. Number two, she could immediately start to collect that judgment by doing a variety of things that are available. I can't explain them to you, but you talk to any lawyer or look it up and you'll see that she could make it difficult for you.
Right.
In a number of different ways, including taking your bank account.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want that to happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to suggest to you, the plaintiff, that you make an agreement with him that he can pay it out over time. And the court will retain jurisdiction to enforce the terms of your settlement.
Okay. Yeah.
So, but I will dismiss the case, meaning he has no record against him. And if he makes all the payments, you're done. And you'll be assured you'll get money every month, as opposed to trying to find out where his bank account is, or whatever the method you're trying to use.
Trying to locate the funds.
But you have to agree to this agreement, because I'm now structuring the payment schedule for you. You're not getting all your money or judgment right now. And she hesitated. I said, you know what? You don't want to do this where you get a judgment against the guy and ruin his credit. It was what it was. You know, forget about the feelings you have about it and do the right thing. She says, okay. So bottom line is they all walked.
You took her out for dinner.
She was way too young. Probably even too long for Jeff Epstein.
Oh, good.
No. I'm only. I was really reaching for that. I was struggling with trying to find something that sounded clever. But the bottom line was...
Yeah, I can see why they told you stop telling jokes in court.
Well, I was also told one time that I was given...
You're in the right place for that. Don't worry.
No, I was also told one time that I was taking too long with some of the cases. I said, am I getting my calendar done?
Yeah.
You're taking... These small claims court cases shouldn't take more than X minutes. I said, you know what? I'm here to listen to the story. If it takes 2X, that's what I'm here to do.
Yeah.
I'm not here to do a quick dispensation of justice.
Yeah.
They didn't like that, but whatever. Look, I was reasonably priced.
Yeah.
And covering some tough courts. And so the bottom line was they they run the courtroom with some degree of formality. But the ultimate result was that this girl did the right thing. She didn't hurt him.
Mm-hmm.
She could have hurt him.
Yeah.
And by not hurting him, someday, somewhere, she will find the right situation as a payback.
Absolutely.
But if you don't know that it's an option,
impressed.
if you don't know that it's an option for you in your life, and you don't do it, and you continue to take from other people for your own benefit at their expense, and you all day once something happens to you, you say this happened suddenly. No, you built it.
Yeah.
You built it because what you did in the past.
I could have presided over every breakup I've ever had with a woman. I've never experienced, especially in a serious thing. First of all, I've never had any financial issues with any ex-partners. I've always paid my way, and they've paid their way, and for the most part,
That's unique.
Yeah, well, I mean, I when I say pay their way, I don't mean paid for dinner. But my current girlfriend, she does. But I also. I can't. As soon as you put emotion, it's so funny how even when presented with the best advice and the best legal advice, and even in a human way such as that, it's amazing how instantaneously women and men would just say, "No, fuck them," because as soon as you wrap emotion into that, it's a very difficult sell to say, "Hey, this is going to be problematic and time-consuming and emotionally draining for both of you."
Well, that's what I...
Yeah, well, that's what I want. Fuck that person,
I can't tell you how many times I heard that, but the fact of the matter is...
Divorce law must be horrendous.
Well, I was certified in that too, believe it or not. Wow. I didn't want to sit in that court, but they were doing domestic violence cases in family court. And the court I was in, which was basically harassment courts, stalking and cyberbullying and stuff, serious stuff too. Some junk, neighbors fighting with each other, but some very serious cases. And so I was certified in the family court by taking the course and taking the test.
Sure.
And they decided not to do it, so I stayed in restraining orders. But I had the experience. I said, I wouldn't want to be in family court. I'd hate that court. That court would be nothing more than people hating each other. Just think of the energy they're generating in that room. The people that once supposedly loved each other now hate each other. Oh, that it's unbridled.
Absolutely.
And that they're mean about it. But it's all ego.
I had an ex-partner who I've talked about on this podcast a number of times. Actually, I'm not I've never really sort of hidden the fact, but she when we broke up, she went out of her way to try and ruin my career in the UK. She wrote an expose for a tabloid newspaper. She presented it as, I was just talking about stand-up material, most of which isn't about you. It's about the father of my child, because I raised her child from a previous relationship for 4 years. And she did this interview with a magazine that was running adverts for my TV show in it at the time. So it was very much a expose. They called it comic two-timing, and she recounted stories about her ex-partner prior to me, the father of her child, and one story about me as stand-up comedy material, and they printed it as a tabloid story, as an expert. She's just broken up with her partner, Jeff Leach, and it shows a photo of me holding her kid on a red carpet event. It was very, very upsetting. And I phoned her up and I said, what do I do with this? Like, first of all, it's exaggerated content because it's your comedy. And so half of the things they've printed as facts about me are either not about me, they're about your father of your child, or they are about me and you've changed the facts to suit comedy. And so therefore they're printing them as factual things about me, which are damaging to my, it feels libelous. And I said, what do you expect me to do in this situation? Do I sue you? Is that what I do now? And she said, you go ahead. You sue a single mother and see how that works out for you. See what story they write next. And I obviously took the loss on that one and just went, I guess I'll just ignore it and move on from it. But that really did damage my career for a while. And I had a similar experience here with a young lady who was jilted. This was not even an ex-lover. This was a woman who propositioned me once at an event, and I turned her down. And then she went out of her way. She kept that in her head, and then went out of her way to try and ruin me later on a platform that I was on. And I always wonder in those situations, especially in today's social climate, I'm under no aspersions that there aren't millions of horrendous pieces of shit men in the world who do terrible things to women. But I do also wonder how many decent, morally and ethically on point men bother to go through the legal process to protect their name, their industry, their business, their opportunity in life, because an ex has decided, oh, I'm gonna fucking ruin you. And they go, well, there's nothing I can do because I'm a big straight white dude who, if you look at me from a distance, everyone goes, he's got no problems. So, whereas a single mother absolutely plays upon the heartstrings. I mean, even in the court of law, I would worry.
But you say plays on the heartstrings. People always say to me, off the record, tell me, don't you decide cases on who you like or who you don't like? I said, the answer is absolutely not. I never decide a case on who I like or I don't like. And I give the illustration of a lady that was actually so annoying.
It's the way they smell. You judge them purely on smell alone.
Well, some of them probably do smell. But that don't even get close enough for me to find out.
There you go. You got that no
I
man's
haven't got a great
between the
sniffer
bench
anyway.
and the... yeah.
But the bottom line,
Please don't approach the bench.
She started to approach the bench. The bailiff had to grab her one time. And I could have thrown her out of the court, obviously, because of her conduct. But I didn't.
Because she was smoking
and
hot.
The defendant came in dressed in a nice suit and tie, very professional, whatever. And I ruled in her favor. People said, you should have. I said, no. What she is, whoever is what she is. But the facts of this case, the evidence in this case, supported her position. And she made her burden of proof to my satisfaction. Mm-hmm. And so therefore I ruled in her favor.
I just think a lot of people would worry that judges like that, like you...
I can't say everybody does that.
That's what I was going to say.
I truly can't say that.
There would be a lot of people would worry that you're in the minority.
Well, you know what? The truth of the matter is it happens more frequently than you think. People get hometowned. We call it hometown. Somebody knows the judge real well. They're around all the time. Mm-hmm. And that's one of my complaints with certain arbitration services. They get the same customers all the time, and I use the word customers very loosely. And so you don't get a real true unbiased opinion or result.
Right.
It just doesn't happen that way. And I know as an absolute fact, 100%, that some judges use their emotions to do what they want to do, and they don't really, and for all the wrong reasons. Some of them work very, very hard. My friend Jimmy Cato in Van Nuys will work until 2 o'clock in the morning to make sure he gets it right. And so there are some judges who are very, very hardworking, intelligent, in it for the right reason, and there's some that are not. The problem for the public is you don't know which one. I try to give you a little indication of how to...
I was going to say in the book.
Yeah, well, there are so many variables in the litigation world, whether it's civil or criminal, and I've been in both fields. There's so many variables that everything is unpredictable. All you can do is educate yourself the best you can on what you got.
Absolutely.
That's the best you can do.
Absolutely.
Otherwise,
and take advice from people you trust as well. That's always,
And I always tell people the same thing. What's the first thing you thought of when the process server came over and served you with a summons and a complaint? What was the first thought you had? Just like you said.
Fuck.
Where do I go from here?
Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry. That's what I meant. Where do we go from here?
How much is going to cost me, and what's my exposure, and can they take my house?
Sure.
Those are the first questions that you have. And so the suggestion is take a deep, very, very deep breath for a minute. Ask yourself, isn't this fear and anxiety and uncertainty, isn't that all ego?
Climb in the shower, have a good cry.
Just recognize you're in it.
Yeah.
This is the reality. This is not the illusion. This is the reality for the moment.
Yeah.
And so the best way you can do it is as dispassionately as you can. It's very difficult to do that.
It's hard, of course. It's hard to
Oh,
remove
very,
yourself in that
very
situation.
hard. Or the same thing when somebody does something wrong to you and you have to sue them.
Hmm.
Why are you in it? To prove that you were right? That's not a good motivation. If you're in it because you want justice or you want what's fair, that's something else. How far are you willing to go? Are you willing to do some of the things like the I guess it's the ex-husband that kind of turned over this tape for this congresswoman. She was involved with some sexual event to somebody.
Sure.
And boom, she's out of work. What did he do? He basically ruined her life in certain ways anyway.
Yeah.
And for what benefit? Strictly an ego. Strictly an ego. And someday, somewhere, he's going to be in the wrong place at the wrong time and not realize that the reason it's happening to him is because it's what he did 20 years earlier, 30 years earlier. And you see people like Bill Cosby and Madoff and some of these people that are all sitting it out right now, they were at the top of the world. And many of them got there because they took it from somebody else.
Yeah.
End of the day, there is pay. And
so what you're saying is my ex-girlfriend is going to catch up with that.
Well, it's not your place.
Yeah.
The system will
but
take care of that.
you are saying categorically she's going down.
I used to tell people
the universe is going to take her down.
You didn't win. You didn't win here.
Dodell, 100% certified approved. She's going down.
Well, don't wish it on her. Just let it be.
I don't. I had to do so much work to forgive those experiences and to move beyond them because I realized the only person who was being affected negatively by me holding on to that was me.
In fact, in the book, I cite from a very well-known psychiatrist and neurologist, Dr. Walter Jacobson, who wrote a book, Forgive to Live. I think it's the title of his book.
Mm-hmm.
But
I like that.
It's really good. He says, when you forgive, you feel better for yourself.
Absolutely.
It's
a hard process. It's a hard process.
Very difficult because what gets in the way? Your ego.
Yeah.
You got to say, who cares who's right and wrong? I make it a practice. I made it a practice to always get along with the other lawyers.
Yeah.
I didn't in the beginning. I was very aggressive and hostile, and I had to whatever shtick I had.
How do you haze another lawyer? What kind of things do you do to throw them off?
You make them do things that they don't really want to do, or make them spend money that they don't really want to spend.
Right.
And they ask for an extension. You say no, even the court's going to give him one.
Yeah.
You make them go to court to get it. I mean, stuff.
Never tripped them up as they're walking, as they're approaching the bench.
Claim they got served with papers on a certain date and didn't, or it goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
And I've seen it. In fact, I've sanctioned some lawyers in my court for playing around with the system.
Really?
Yes, I have. And if it's $1,000 or more, they have to report it to the bar. I wasn't out there freewheeling and doing it on a regular basis.
Sure.
But when I saw it happen, I sanctioned them, made them pay.
Yeah.
Money didn't go to me; it went to the other side.
Sure.
And they didn't like that very much. I thought it would serve as somewhat of a deterrent for the next time around. Most of the time, they just calculate it in as a cost of business.
There you go. So
I could tell you stories about the things that some firms have done, the documents that dismissed or were shredded or never appeared. One case, they said that they didn't have the documents anymore because the cat in the storage facility peed on them. That was the explanation for that one. But there's always, he doesn't work here anymore. You call, he's out to lunch. I mean, this is the stuff that goes on.
I had a small victory, a TV show that I did called Confessions of a Sex Addict. And it was an immersive documentary about sex addiction. Because I used to be quite a prolific whore, Judge, back in the day. And I did this documentary, and the production company who I made it with, we had a contract in which it stipulated that any further sales of the program to any other distribution companies or to any other networks, they would have to pay me 15% of the price, the amount that was the profits that it was sold for. And I changed agents a couple of times, so no one was following up on the payments. And I realized recently, and maybe last year, I think I'm probably owed quite a bit of money. And I reached out to them. In fact, I reached out to one of their distribution companies first, and I said, "Hey, hi, my name's Jeff Leach. I am presenter of this program. I'm one of the owners of the IP, and blah 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 blah. And just wanted to get a list. Anyway, fortunately, the woman who happened to be in the office that day took everything I said at face value. Obviously, checked out my information, and she sent me a long list of all the sales they'd made. And then I emailed the production company and said, you owe me quite a bit of money because this program this is over 9 years. This program has been aired over 9 years, multiple times on multiple networks across the thing. These are the ones that I'm aware of because of the distribution company. Anyway, they're like, from now on you have to email us directly. We've told the distribution company you can't speak to them, blah, 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 blah. I said, well, okay, that's a different issue, but let's not worry about that right now. Anyway, it took me a year, but I got my money. And I did that off my own back. And I had to start threatening legal action with equity, which is effectively like SAG-AFTRA in the UK. I said, I said the next stage for me is to involve equities lawyers to make sure I get my money. But even to this day, I still have to email them every 3 months, say, hey, what are the latest sales? And right now it's difficult to find out because they've stopped me speaking to the distribution company, which I'm sure that would be the next stage, is to argue with that. But it's amazing how people will try. If you're not constantly on top of your game, looking after your own legal and financial safety, people will screw you. They will screw you at every opportunity.
That's why the courts are so busy.
That's why they need this
and
as
that's
well, right? That's why people need to.
Well, I like to
read the book.
I like to think that anybody that's using this book, I'm not saying you're going to read all the chapters in it.
Give me a very brief way. If people, obviously we have about 51,000 unique listeners now to the podcast, and some viewers on YouTube as well who watch the video footage. Those people, some people were going, oh yeah, there's some things I could learn, but why am I going to read this book over anyone else? What does this do for people, and who is this aimed at?
It's aimed for basically three purposes.
Okay.
The first, of course, is information for people who just want to know.
Mm-hmm.
How does the system work from the inside? We hear terms and we see TV shows, and how does it really work?
I object.
I object, and I deal with that in the book, by the way. Nobody's objected to that part of the book, but the reality, that's number one. Number two is I use the stories. The stories are entertaining, so when you read them, and the points are easily made. It's the reason why I'm telling the story, and by giving them the illustrations and everything, I'm kind of educating them, but I'm also saying to them, if it happened to somebody else, it could happen to you, just as I mentioned a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
The reality is that it gives you a sense of real reality. And the third is to give you guidelines. If you're in it, what do you do? How do I do such and such? I just got served with this paper. What does it mean?
And we're talking about a huge array of different situations that can
sure,
apply
landlord-tenant,
landlord-tenant, contract disputes, restraining orders,
criminal,
if you've been charged with a crime,
small claims court.
Small claims court, yeah. There's
that
a lot
small
of different
claims court
things in
section
there.
is really very, very good because most people don't realize they have the same remedies. Oh, not all, in small claims court as they do in any other court, except it's limited in terms of the amount of recovery, and there are no lawyers.
Right.
And certain things cannot be decided in small claims court, but certain things can. You're talking about cyberbullying and things like that. Why not go to small claims court?
Sure.
I had a case with a restraining order case where a party came in and had her phone with her and wanted to show me what was happening. It was a restraining order case. And there was a picture of a girl sitting on the floor with a beer can in one hand and a gun in the other with a little not too nice comment below it. And I granted the restraining order, but maybe something could have been moderated with something like that, but it wasn't. And so our jobs really as bench officers is to neutrally evaluate the situation, to keep the emotions out and try to get them resolved. And so that was the purpose of the book. And talking about the chapters in the book, I added some things, an article that I wrote, a Court of Appeal opinion, Supreme Court opinion that I had argued that we won 7-0. Established new law in California. I have that in there.
Mm-hmm.
So when you talked about the number of pages, That's why the book is 300 some odd, but it's really not. It's really like 280 pages.
Don't tell him that. Don't tell him that.
But it's a great book to have on the shelf.
Absolutely.
A reference book. Can you get information from Google? You could get basic information, factual information, but it's not going to tell you how to do something. And it's not going to tell you that the machine, has all these years of experience and what to expect from the various aspects of the event, whatever that event turns out to be. So this is a good reference book to keep on the shelf if you ever need it.
Absolutely.
Cheaper and easier to read than what you're going to get from a lawyer and the mumbo jumbo that also comes along with it.
It's available now.
Yeah, Amazon.
On Amazon. It's called From the Trench to the Bench, ladies and gentlemen. Written by Judge Herb Dodell. My apologies for mispronouncing your surname at the beginning. 10,000 cases in, argue before the California Supreme Court. And we've done 2 podcasts together now, and it's been a pleasure both times. Thank you so much.
I really, just as a kind of a close.
Absolutely.
I really enjoyed the show we did in New York with Sherrod.
Yeah.
It was fun. And I said to somebody...
Sherrod Small's a very funny guy, and he gets a different mix of characters on that show.
Well, we were certainly 3 different types of people.
Absolutely, yeah. It was interesting doing a show. I haven't seen Ann Coulter since we... I've seen her a couple of times in New York. We see each other at the Comedy Cellar, etc., and through mutual friends. And I think I said to you that time, it's whilst I find some of her... at least what she claims to be publicly held opinions, although I think a lot of them are gross exaggerations for entertainment purposes. But even though I find some of those beliefs she has utterly abhorrent, I can't deny that she's an incredibly intelligent woman, and she's also lovely company. She's really lovely company.
You know what?
Which is problematic for me.
Well, but the bottom line was I was telling my wife the same thing. I said, we had time to talk before the show started and afterwards, so I got a chance to have a one-on-one conversation. And my takeaway was she's fun. She's extremely bright. She says things that have a kernel of truth in all of it. And so some of them more than others.
Sure.
Some of her opinions are well established and gave me an opportunity to think about it. Because I'm fascinated by what's going on here.
Yeah.
I did my radio show, which is called For the People, on this whole impeachment process right after I did the interview with Ann Coulter.
Right.
And I've been doing research. Believe it or not, I'm sitting at the desk and I'm doing research now, going back and looking at state and federal court cases to kind of predict where we're going with this.
Right.
And so I'm doing shows on it to educate the public. So you're hearing it from somebody who's neutral.
Yeah.
And as I said many times, I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I'm a registered independent. I don't make any real political choices until I hear everything that's admissible, other than the hearsay and all the stories,
right,
before I make a determination. That's what the public should do. No quick judgments. Quick judgment is reactive. Wait and hear it all. And so I've been doing all this research and doing the shows on the subject, and some of the things that Ann said are really true.
Right.
I hadn't thought about it before.
Except that bit about how all Mexicans are rapists. That bit.
Well, some of the things I agree with you. I think she does a certain amount of this shock value.
Absolutely,
no question about it. But she does it with a smiling personality, and she truly is fun.
Yeah,
my friends who hate her.
I went on a date with her. I think I mentioned it. I don't know if I mentioned it on the podcast. We went on a date when I first moved to New York. Went on a date, went out, we got drunk, we had sushi, and then we ended up, fumbling about with each other in the back of a New York taxi cab. That was the one night I had out with Ann Coulter, and she was like, if only I was, you were 10 years older or I was 10 years younger. I was like, all right, and that was it. But we just, we remained friendly. We remained friendly with each other because it's difficult for me, especially as a man who now is dating a woman of color as well, and I see all the experiences and I hear all the stories of things that she's had to navigate and overcome just to garner an opportunity, let alone the immense success that my girlfriend has. It's interesting now that I go, oh well, yeah, I have to take a little more seriously what people's public personas are. even if they're exaggerations, even if it's for entertainment value or shock value, it's still, I morally and ethically have to align that with how the people that I care about and how they've been treated, you know?
Well, it's all very interesting, but keep one thing in mind, a spiritual point, a closing point.
Yeah.
Is sometimes when things are happening to you, your view is it's really negative and it's hurting you and it's all these other things. Mm-hmm. But there is this ray of sunshine inside of all of that because you're getting a lesson.
Absolutely.
And sometimes you need to be told in a graphic way that you need to make a change.
Sure. We're also, though, a couple of straight white dudes. We're doing all right.
I'm not complaining.
Yeah, you know what I mean? we're okay. Ladies and gentlemen, Judge Herb Dodell, From the Trench to the Bench, is available now on Amazon. Pick up a copy of it. Come on, it's coming up to Christmas as well. It's a perfect gift for any of your friends who might have some legal needs right now, and also want to expand their spiritual understanding of the law of this country and the legal system in which you live. Thank you so much for joining me, sir.
Thank you. It was great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Loved it.
I hope we'll spend time together again. Take care, guys.